Assalamu alaikum. It's your brother Haqq Islam, and welcome to this week's edition of the Oasis. I have a community activist, someone that I'm very proud of and a fan of. She is also known as the Mayor of Queens, and we're going to talk politics. We're going to have some fun, and we're going to talk about Queens, my favorite borough.
Yes.
Welcome to the Oasis, Rana Abdelhamid.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here because I've been following you for a while.
Nice. I'm really glad to be here too.
Queens is close to my heart. That's where I grew up.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? So let's go back to the beginning. How did a family from Egypt immigrate and find its way to Queens?
Yeah, I think about that often too. So my father is actually the first person to immigrate from my family.
But why? Did he see Coming to America or something? So I'm going to Queens.
Just like went on the globe.
Yeah.
Same thing. No, I don't. I actually have no idea why Queens. All I know is that he had the opportunity to leave Egypt, and he was kind of like someone who wanted to get married in Egypt, was struggling financially, and so he wanted to come to the United States to try to better himself economically and get better off financially. And at the time, actually, he and my mom had been together since they were in college. They're college sweethearts, which is really sweet. But then
they met in Egypt.
They met at Alexandria University.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is that's outside of Cairo or in Alexandria?
In Alexandria.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And yeah, he came first and then he brought her. I think that before he came to Queens, there was already a community of Egyptians that had been established in Queens.
So that's what provoked him.
Yes. And some of them were his college classmates, so people he had been in university with, which actually they still have reunions, which is really sweet, in Astoria.
That's great. Yeah.
So there was a sense of community.
So many great restaurants in Astoria.
So many great restaurants. And that
Muslim restaurants.
Yeah, Muslim owned, halal, all the good vibes. And so that's what brought him. Yeah.
So when did you come?
I was born here.
Here?
Yeah, I was born in Queens. I was born in Flushing Hospital, actually. My mom was walking down the street and then her water broke, which is how I ended up in Flushing Hospital. But yeah, been born and raised since.
Where does your passion for Queens come from?
I think it's just, I've been to so many different parts of the world, and there is nothing that really stands out to me in the way that Queens is such a space where people come and create community and preserve their cultural heritage and like start businesses and create these safe spaces for themselves. Like there's so many little Manila, right? There's a Chinatown in Flushing. There's a K-Town, right? There's little Egypt. There's little Colombia and little Thailand. So
it's the most diverse borough in New York City.
Right.
And what you're talking about is what makes diversity, the people, the town, the community, the food.
The language, over 800 languages spoken, right? You could walk every other block and you don't even hear English. Like, I love the fact that people are able to be unapologetically themselves and just like be in community.
So what was your best childhood memory? Because this passion is fueled from something.
Yeah. I think one of the things that like really sticks out to me from my childhood is just our mosque and masjid culture. Like I used to do karate out of the basement of our mosque. And I just, as someone who's been an athlete my whole life, like really enjoyed the competitive nature of karate. And
what provoked that?
Doing karate?
Yes. I
was small. I mean, I'm still small. I'm 5'1", and I think people would like pick on me.
Your size is towering.
That's what matters.
Yes,
Thank you.
Your
Thank
size
you.
is overwhelming.
Yes.
You just when you walked in, you just took up the space.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So my parents just put me in karate because they were like, she's got to stick up for herself. She's got to toughen up.
And this was because of they saw something in Queens that were Muslims being. Well, that's really not a smart question on my part because Muslims are always being harassed.
Exactly. So like even before 9/11, even though we did have a community, we were still a minority. So the fact that my mom wore a hijab was something that people would bring up in school and like tease me about, or like the fact that I had a Muslim sounding name, like all these things were still things that people would bring up even before 9/11, the xenophobia. Yeah.
All right. So now you're what? How old are you when you started taking karate?
I was like 7 years old.
7 years
Yeah,
old?
I was very young. I've been doing it my whole life. And it's really sweet. My sister, she's 17. She has my same sensei. I still go to that same sensei. So it's really a family.
Now you're a black belt, and you also, what are some of the disciplines you've studied?
So my focus is Shotokan karate, but I also did Taekwondo.
Tell everybody out there, what's Shotokan?
So Shotokan karate is a traditional Japanese martial arts form. And so you'll see that in Shotokan, we have a very specific style of kata. And kata is the form that we do, which combines different techniques and movements to actually practice like discipline of fighting. And it's the art form of the martial arts.
You see, I told you she's special. I told everybody out there that you're special. So this art form, there's another discipline you studied outside of Shotokan, right?
Yeah, I've done Taekwondo, I've done Muay Thai, I've done kickboxing, boxing. So I've done a lot of different kinds of martial arts.
Why did you gravitate to different ones?
Because I was just trying to like learn more of the self-defense technique and learn more of just like the martial arts practice, which ultimately helped me as a self-defense instructor.
So now you're teaching.
Yeah, I teach.
Okay, how did that evolve to the practice of teaching? Because I want to go into I'm wise and...
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that I would teach self-defense. Even when I first started teaching self-defense, I was really teaching karate, which anybody knows who's like in this space knows there's a difference between karate and self-defense practice.
What's the difference?
That self-defense is very focused on like situational awareness. It's very focused on de-escalation. It's very focused on scenario-based role play that then allows you to de-escalate using different tactics and techniques, like grappling and voice.
This is so fascinating.
It's really awesome. It's super powerful because you're putting yourself in a situation where you then have to visualize your control in a potentially violent situation.
Now, somebody told me you went to your imam and he rejected.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I grew up in Queens. I grew up in this local community neighborhood. And I think at the time, there was just a lot of fear. It was post 9/11. It's an immigrant community. A lot of folks are undocumented, including the local imam at the time. And I think people just wanted to keep their heads down. So anything that sounded a little bit political or slightly reactive or responsive to the current political moment was seen as it would bring bad attention, negative attention. So I actually had to go all the way to Brooklyn, so shout out to Brooklyn, to do my first class. And it was a mosque out there that I did it.
What was the name of the organization you started, and what was the mosque? Where was the mosque?
So the organization is called Malikah, which is Arabic for queen, and I worked with the Mass Youth Center of Brooklyn.
And they embraced you, and how old were you?
I was 16 at the time.
This is a lot going on.
I know, it's been a while. I know, there's a lot. I was really outside as a teenager.
All right, so let's now, we're going to go a little deeper because you're very deep. You went to Middlebury College. That had to be a culture shock.
Oh my God.
And how did a girl from Queens girl, get from Queens to Middlebury?
Yeah. Anytime you meet a Queens kid who went to a predominantly white institution, oftentimes it ties back to one person, and this person is called Peter Wilson. He was a college counselor at a Sunnyside Community Services, which is like a college readiness program. And I'll never forget.
What was your high school?
I went to Townsend Harris High School.
Okay.
Yeah, which is like a really good school, very close-knit, very small.
How was your grades?
I was very academic.
I'm honing in on that because there's a lot going on in your house. Like, we need you to be disciplined. We need you to study.
Right.
We need you to practice your deen.
Yeah, exactly.
All that's going on.
Going to the mosque, learning Arabic, learning Quran, going to competition. I think it's also just like, for me, the drive came from seeing the sacrifice of both of my parents. They worked all the time just to be able to make ends meet. And so to see their sacrifice, I wanted to show something for that. Yeah. So
No, let's go. Let's talk about Peter Wilson
So Peter Wilson.
Getting to Middlebury.
Peter Wilson. I will never forget, I was in the center and he was like, you should apply to Middlebury. And I was like, what is Middlebury? And he was like, don't worry about it. They got money. And I was like, okay. And so he just like helped me. And this scholarship that I applied for called the Posse Scholarship, which maybe you've heard of. But it's a scholarship that basically takes young people from cities across the United States, mostly people of color, and brings us to predominantly white institutions as a posse. So we go together so that the culture shock isn't too much.
Isn't too much. How many for your freshman class? How many in the posse?
10. Yeah.
It helped.
Yeah, it helped because you have other kids who like were public school graduates who didn't know what skiing was and didn't
No, for all those that don't know, Middlebury College is in Vermont.
It's in Vermont.
That had to be.
I will never forget when I got in, my parents and I, the first thing, we were like, first of all, shook that I was shocked because I thought I was going to apply. And if I got in, God meant it to be, you know? But if I didn't, then great, I tried. And we were just Googling, what is the closest mosque? Is there halal food in Middlebury, Vermont? How many Muslims in Middlebury, Vermont?
Was there a mosque?
Yeah, there was, because there is a really large East African and Eastern European refugee community that actually was resettled in Burlington, Vermont.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, I recently read about a councilwoman that was from East Africa was in Vermont.
Yeah,
so now it makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah, so it really was a culture shock, 100%. And I think it was in a lot of different ways. It wasn't just the demographics of the school from a racial perspective, but also mostly, honestly, from a class perspective. Growing up as a low-income working class person, I didn't understand that I was, you know? It's kind of just like everybody's like that. Everybody's an immigrant. Yeah, like I didn't feel like we were like on the struggle bus or anything because, yeah, it makes sense. My parents are working all the time. Yeah, it makes sense. We have to move because we can't afford rent. Yeah, it makes, you know, like there's like things that just like everybody around me experience. And then you're going to a place where people's grandparents literally own like things that I didn't even think could be owned, like squares of parks or, you know, just like things like this. And they have generational wealth. I think that was the biggest culture shock for me. So,
okay, what are you studying and why did you study it?
That's a very good question. I'm walking down my own life's memory lane for this.
That's what this is. This is your life.
I went into Middlebury. So before I went to Middlebury, I thought I was going to study political science. And I went to another imam in my neighborhood, and he had heard that I was studying political science. First of all, it was really controversial for me as a young woman to leave home. Like I was the first person from my neighborhood truly to go dorm and leave my neighborhood and not be with my parents. And my parents like really stood up for me. They had my back. They trusted me. Even when people in the community were petty and they would be like, how dare you? Like, this is so bad. They would always like have my back. So
listen, your parents are amazing.
My parents are.
They had their daughter studying karate and all different disciplines.
Yeah.
So I know dad was like, whatever.
They're like, she got it. We gave her the values and now she's going to decide, you know? And they had faith in their own foundation. So before I left, I spoke to this imam and I will never forget that conversation because I told him, I was like, I want to study political science. And he is this political advocate. He came from North Africa, had experienced a lot of like conflict with governments, et cetera, and had to like come as an asylee to the United States. And I remember him looking at me and he was like, you will never succeed in politics because as a Muslim woman, your values will always clash with the values of the system that you want to work for. And he was like, don't study politics, like study something in science. And then if there is an opportunity for you to do politics, you can do that. So I left that conversation. I was like, I'm not studying, like, I'm so scared. Like, it really shook me. And I did for 3 years study pre-med at Middlebury College. But then like I was taking political science classes and I was taking economics classes and I was studying language.
And that's where you gravitated toward.
It was my natural love, and I was organizing the whole time. The whole entire time. I would like leave Vermont. I would go to these statewide conferences, go to New York, go to Chicago.
Didn't you start in a branch of Amnesty International?
Yeah.
I see a lot of people are talking to me about you.
Yeah. I did. I started Amnesty International at Middlebury College on campus and was organizing with Amnesty International statewide.
So you've graduated with a degree in?
Political science and economics.
Okay. So your passion rose to the top.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Next step, Harvard University.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
So typically people are like, don't go to grad school right after undergrad. And I didn't think I was going to do that. Didn't think I was going to go directly into grad school, but I did receive a scholarship called the Truman Scholarship, which is a funding opportunity that supports graduate school education.
So your grades must have been.
I love reading. I'm very nerdy.
Very disciplined.
I'm actually very nerdy. People don't think that, but I'm like, I love to read all the time.
What was the last movie you saw?
The last movie I saw? I don't remember.
Is that long ago?
No, probably not. Like probably.
I don't think so. I think you
just
want everyone out there to think she's a nerd. She's not a nerd. You know what I'm saying? But okay, so we're at Harvard. Culture Shock Part 2.
Yeah, Culture Shock Part 2. But it was
Queens
different.
girl.
It was different. I was a Queens girl. We had our little Queens crew. There was like 5 of us across all of Harvard University's grad school programs.
What was the music of the time?
Do I remember?
You seem like a Tribe Called Quest kind of girl.
yeah, Queens. I don't even remember.
Now we'll leave it at Tribe.
All right, sounds good.
We'll stop right there. So we're at Harvard University. We're organizing. We're doing what? We're kicking butts whenever necessary. Are you doing any discipline training? Are you training any?
Yeah, so I'm still involved. So even though Malikah isn't an organization the way it is right now, I'm still teaching self-defense. So we actually started a Boston chapter when I was out there. I would do train the trainer workshops. I would do these like training boot camps. When I was at Harvard University is when Trump got elected for the first time. And so it was a really difficult time on campus. It was also a time when Black Lives Matter was organizing. There was a lot of racial justice movement.
Yeah, because of George Floyd's.
Mm-hmm. And I will never forget, like, we organized this massive, like, 25,000 person march that was in solidarity with the,
what city?
Across immigrant communities in Boston.
In Boston, 25,000.
Yeah. Copley Square.
Wow.
Yeah. It was incredible.
Did you speak?
And I was the MC. And Elizabeth Warren was standing.
Queen's girl.
Yeah. So it was, and I just will never forget the sound of the adhan that we played to start the rally, you know? And that it was just like a sea of people from all different backgrounds really standing against the Muslim ban.
Queen's girl had no fear. 25,000
we were outside.
people.
We were outside.
All the way outside. Mixing it up. Doing your thing.
We had to do it. We had to. And so, it felt really important at the time.
It was. Mm-hmm. And it still is. Because it hasn't
obviously
changed. This is America. To borrow a childish Gambino phrase.
Yes.
You know. All right. America. So now we leave Harvard. Our road is community activism. You leave Harvard.
Yeah, and after Harvard, I actually worked in tech, which is a lot of people might not know. So instead of coming to New York, I actually ended up in California.
I didn't hear any tech in. I heard pre-med.
I know, never. And
I heard. Like, how'd that happen?
It's an interesting story, but I tried to apply. I did apply to some public service jobs, but unfortunately at the time, a specific job that I had applied to in the government didn't come through, and the one job that I got, just like trying to get a job, was in the tech industry. And
Well, you want to name the company? You want to name the city?
yeah, I was in San Francisco. I worked for Google, so it was like obviously a pretty big company, and worked specifically on supporting their like women's equity work, so women in tech.
Oh, so
Women
this was
tech.
really post George Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
it
think
was
that department is closed.
exactly different times, and doing a lot of stuff. Actually, there was like a huge investment on like specifically supporting Black women in tech, specifically telling stories about Black women in tech, and so was there for about 18 months before I really fought my way back to come to New York.
Why was it a fight? Was it an internal jihad? Or?
Not internal, but also just like financially trying to come back to my city and like still have like the financial way to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so now you come back to New York, your community activism starts again.
So I come back to New York. It is before, like, I think 6 or 7 months before the pandemic. And I'm living with my parents. And during the pandemic, a lot of things, and even before the pandemic, started to slowly start organizing back in my neighborhood. And it was really during the pandemic when so much of that escalated because, so much of the mortality rates and so much of the discrepancy within the public healthcare system really manifested the most in Queens, where we were seeing those lines where people weren't accessing healthcare, where people weren't accessing food. And it was that really brought me full, just break down the door back into organizing in my neighborhood.
How'd your parents feel about it?
It's interesting. My parents are very political people in that I was raised in a household that understands class politics really well, that understands decolonial politics really well, racial justice really well. That is very different, I think, from many people and how they think about their immigrant parents. So I feel lucky for that. And it's been like a co-education, as I learn things, I bring my parents into that education. So they were supportive. They never were unsupportive. Do they want me to have a practical, non-stressful life? Yes.
But
of course.
But I want to go down that road for a minute.
Yeah.
Because you're necessary. One thing that I remember I saw, what gravitated toward me, my love of Queens also, is the fact that you did this video where you were pointing to an apartment building that had $4,000 rent in Queens. Tell me about some of the changes that you're seeing happening in Queens.
To live in Astoria, to live in Queens today as someone who's from there is to be in kind of this constant mourning. I love Queens and what it is, and I know that Queens is fleeting and is disappearing because of development, because of luxury development that is displacing the people who built so much of this community, built so much of this infrastructure, built the culture of why people want to move to Queens, built the safety. And that loss is really a heartbreak. And as an organizer, I do my best to stop as much as I can. But I know that the structures are so massive and have so much money. And I see the buildings constantly popping up. And then at the same time, I'm going to my office and people are walking in and they're being harassed.
What do you do now?
I run Malikah in Queens, in Astoria.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. People, there's so much hip hop that came out of Queens.
Yeah.
Right? And I 50 Cent, Nas, Tribe Called Quest, LL Cool J, Russell Simmons, Ja Rule, I could just keep going on. And someone needs to do a documentary about this because the Queens experience is such a unique experience.
It is.
Because most of my friends, I came from Queens, right? Most of my friends came from two-parent households. Mm. And the educational system was extraordinary at the time.
Yeah.
The neighborhood schools were great. The community was great because you can go to the neighbor's house and go to the basement and play music and have a good time. your parents, the neighbors would look out for everything.
That was how I grew up.
Exactly.
100%.
And that's why I want you to elaborate on that, because people really don't know the Queens experience and the amazing diversity. I know we touched on it at the beginning, but I want you to get a little deeper.
Yeah.
Because your love
it's
is rooted in this.
100%. And actually, like my whole entire vision for the world comes from this. It comes from growing up and literally seeing how everybody had each other's back in this way that was so fluid. Like, it was a very collectivist culture, which is wild to think about. Like, you're in New York, you're like, everyone's like hyper individual. They're just trying to make money and like be successful on their own. And Queens, that was not my experience of Queens. If my mom was late from work, like, I had a neighbor that I would go to who would pick me up, right? Or vice versa. She would pick up our neighbors from school. If I didn't get a meal that day, like, someone would be feeding us, right? Vice versa, we would be doing the same thing. We'd celebrate together, birthdays, right? In Astoria Park, we had these facilities. You're right, like, the public library was beautiful and a great place for us. Astoria Park, the museums, the schools. So we also had all this public infrastructure that was really well invested in, that was at the cross-section of culture and literature and art and food. And I think that's why so many people thrive there and have been able to build so much there. But that is it's becoming a place that is no longer inclusive of people who are coming into New York, but it's becoming a place where you have to be able to pay a certain amount to be able to live. And that's not how
that
it's been.
amount takes away community.
100%.
And this is one reason why, in my opinion, of course, it's my show, that hip hop coming out of New York sucks.
Coming just out of New York.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's just true. Across the board.
So commercialized.
But the
like, who can afford to do art?
Yeah.
Yeah, and who has capacity
art was
to
such
do
a
art.
part of our lives. It was just what we breathed, you know what I'm saying? Because it was all around the library, the school. There was after-school programs. The library had after-school programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we love Queens.
Yeah.
You are known as the mayor of Queens. How did that come about?
Honestly, I have no idea. I really think that so much of my organizing is focused on Astoria. Like, that's where I am. I'm always on Steinway Street. That's where our center is. Last night we threw a party. There was like 150 children for
Was that the video
events.
I saw?
Probably, yeah.
But the brother was sitting outside reading Quran?
Exactly, yeah. And so many community members.
I was at Hamido's on Saturday.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Did you like it? I'm so proud of that.
I always go there.
Nice.
But you know what I did? People don't know. Hamido's is the best
good
fish restaurant ever. The brothers, they from Egypt, right?
Yeah, Alexandria.
The food is great. So I went to the original one, and I said, it's closed. No,
across
the street.
Yes,
Man,
they needed more space.
2 floors is just, you got Hamido's on Ditmas Boulevard.
Yeah,
right, Ditmas Boulevard.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Jamaica, Ditmars.
Nice.
You know,
I spent a lot of time in Jamaica.
Yeah, I know, because you're the mayor of Queens. You know what I'm saying? That's your title, you know?
Yeah, that's funny.
How did that come about?
Honestly, I don't know. I didn't even know it was like official. I just know people say it, you know, and I don't mind it. I'm like, all right, cool.
All right. Now we're going to get deep.
Oh, no. I'm ready.
What's a democratic socialist?
Oh, okay. That's not that deep. So when I think about what democratic socialist is, I think about someone who understands that democracy and democratic principles need to be tied together with economic justice, and that government needs to provide the basic needs of its citizens. So the government should be providing access to quality healthcare for all. The government should be providing access to quality housing, affordable housing for all, because housing is a human right, right? The government should be providing not racially segregated, economically segregated public schools, but public schools that are equitable and accessible to all. Unfortunately, so many of our human rights are not invested in by the government. We spend so much of our taxpayer dollars on so many other things, but we don't spend it on the things that citizens actually need.
You know, at one time, America did invest in his citizenry. And I think that was before Black and brown people were really citizens. But that's the deep part of our discussion that we'll have on another day, you know. Okay, so Democratic Socialist Rana Abdelhamid runs for Congress.
What a time.
Talk about it.
I mean, that was during the pandemic. It was right after a really difficult time in my life. My mom got very sick during the pandemic. She got COVID very early on. And she has underlying conditions, so it was very complex. And at the time I had some friends who were in the medical field, and they just kept telling me over and over, don't send your mom to a Queens hospital. Like, that was their advice. And I was just like, what?
Why?
The reason is because they were so underfunded and so understaffed that people were going there and they were dying.
Queens hospitals used to be the best hospitals in New York.
So well invested.
Yeah.
We had more hospitals than we do now. And people were lining up in front of the hospitals and they weren't getting the healthcare that they needed. And so
Where'd you take your mom?
We left her at home. We kept her at home. And there were so many nights where we had to like make the difficult decision. We're like, okay, we know that she really needs help, but like, I don't know. I really don't know if I take her to the hospital, if she's going to be worse off than if she stays here.
That's true. Yeah, especially during that time.
Yeah.
I think Queens had the largest death rate.
One of the highest death rates, if not the highest death rate. Yeah. And even the guidance that was being given by government at the time, people were like, you know, you need to isolate, you need to work from home. I'm like, well, if someone's a cab driver, they're not working from home. Like, if someone's living 3 generations in a household in a 1-bedroom, which is most of my neighbors, they're not they're not isolated.
Crazy time, you know?
So it just felt disconnected.
We gotta get to, you see Carolyn Maloney.
Yes.
And you say, I'm taking her out.
Because
Carolyn Maloney, for all those that don't know, she is the congressman?
She was the Congress member.
But she doesn't have her seat anymore?
No, she no longer has her seat. When I was young, Congress member Maloney was my Congress member when I was like 8 years old. She had been in the seat for over 30 years. She had never been to my neighborhood. She was my member. She never came through to my neighborhood until I ran for office.
That's hard to do.
This is I know, I'm just like, where have you been?
That's hard to do because it's you know, a congressional district is 500,000 people. So it's not, because of the density of New York, it's not, you know, that's not that big.
Right.
Astoria, your community is very dense.
Yes, very, very dense. And again, she was very disconnected. I will never forget when I was growing up when she wore a burqa on the House floor to advocate for the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. This was someone who was very connected to a very particular part of the district. And the district I was running in had the richest part of the United States, so Billionaires Row, Museum Mile, and then also the largest public housing in all of North America.
There's a Billionaires Row in Queens?
In Manhattan. It spanned Manhattan to Queens.
Oh.
So it was both. So imagine the discrepancy that existed within this one district.
Wow. So, burqa on the floor, you see that, you say, I'm taking her out.
I see that, and I'm like, listen, my people, my community, Queens, feels really underrepresented right now.
Very much so.
And very unseen.
Because didn't the district get chopped up? It
got chopped up because I was running. So it got gerrymandered. They cut in half of my district. So I ran for 18 months. We raised over $1 million, mobilized tens of thousands of people. And literally like a month before the election, the district was changed.
Who was the mayor at the time?
Who's the mayor?
At the time, yeah, because that...
De Blasio, but it was the governor, actually.
Cuomo?
Hochul
did this?
I don't know exactly who did it, but...
What's the district now? Who's the congressperson?
So my congress member now actually is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh. So we got a good congress member who represents us. But the district was completely changed, so I wasn't running against.
So it's the Bronx and Queens. That's
Yes.
That's good.
It was redrawn.
Because I was about to start fundraising for your next congressional campaign. Listen, I'm so happy that you came through. You're just an incredible. We need more of you in communities because your activism is not seen the way it should be throughout America, because America is at a crossroads now, and it's really looking at black and brown people in a very disturbing way, So we have to fight harder. And listen, I make music, I sit down and talk to interesting people. So I'm the kind of person that wants to support somebody like you. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate your time. I really do. This was great. Great conversation. We'll keep it going.
What's next?
For my life?
Yes.
Or today? What's next? I mean, I've been really focused.
New York City Council can hear your voice.
So far I've been really focused on Malikah and doing advocacy work in New York City.
Right.
I think there's a lot of fight to be fought in the grassroots, in community.
How does someone support you?
You could show up to our Malikah Safety Center. You could show up to our events.
What about this?
You could also donate to our nonprofit, Malikah.org.
Look, where's the camera? Remy, which camera should she look at?
Hard ask. Which one do I look at? Here? Okay.
Talk to this camera and ask them peoples for some money.
You could donate to Malikah. You could just go to Malikah.org. Is that good?
Yeah. No. Say no.
I raised so much money when I was running for office, but it still is like,
No, but your activism has to be supported.
100%. Yeah. You're right.
Look in that camera. Tell them. Right. Send her some money.
Send me some. Queens get the money. Send me some money.
Malikah.org.
Yeah, Malikah.org.
And again, what does Malikah do besides, train this fighting force?
Yeah, so we run a mutual aid hub in Queens. We provide cash assistance to people who are struggling to pay their rent, struggling with food, struggling to move out of their home if they're a domestic violence survivor. We do self-defense programming. We do healing program. We do culture events. We do all kinds of things for the community. You
tell Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, we're all proud of her.
Nice, will do.
Yo, she's doing her thing.
It's hard. It's a hard time to be in politics right now.
She's no longer a Bronx girl. She's a Queens girl. Till the Queens girls get the money.
Yes, exactly.
Rana, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We need you to come back.
Yeah.
Whenever you get the opportunity, you want to talk about something. Because we didn't go deep. We got to go deep.
There's more. There's more.
I was a political science major.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I see it.
Oh, thank you. Listen, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the Oasis. Listen, you are now my friend, Rana Abdelhamid from Queens. Queens Girls. Yeah. Queens Girls get the money. Support her organization, Malikah.org.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's perfect.
Yeah. All right. Send us some money, please.
Yes.
Until next time, brothers and sisters, the Oasis is signing off. Season 3, we're here now giving you great information from Muslims who are breaking cultural barriers and norms. So many more exciting guests coming up. Have a good evening. Assalamu alaikum.